Hello. In this video, I'd like to show the biblical teaching on Supralapsarianism. I'd like to start with Ephesians 1, looking particularly at verse 4. According as he hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. The key here is this expression, before the foundation of the world. The objection to using this as a supralapsarian text is that it refers to the before the foundation of the world in time. And the answer is that there is no time before the foundation of the world. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The foundation of the world is the beginning of time, and therefore there is no time before the foundation of the world. And so before must refer to a priority, beforeness, in terms not of time, but in terms of God's purpose. And you can see that later in, for example, in the passage, for example, in verse 9, having made known unto us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he had purposed in himself. So I understand this before the foundation of the world to be referring to before his purpose in creating the world and in allowing men to fall into their sins. His purpose is to save those whom he has chosen. You can see the same thing in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9. Who hath saved us, and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. It's the same point here. Before the world began, well, there is no before the beginning of time itself, in time. There is only a beginning in terms of God's own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. Not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace. Now, I used to read this, and I would say other verses like it, as not according to our good works, because we don't have any good works. But I think to take the sense more plainly is that it would have to be understood of sinful works as well, the works that we actually do have. And that sense is justified by Hebrews 9:14. Works not only refers to good works, it refers to dead works. Hebrews 9:14, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So it's not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. All right, the next passage I'd like to look at is Romans 9, verse 10 to 13. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth, it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. So the objection to this passage is that the children, although they had not yet been born, they had been conceived, as the passage states, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one. And that they had done good or evil, in this case, because they had been conceived, they were guilty original sin and had committed, you might say, sins of the heart. And now that I think about it, the book of Genesis does say that they wrestled with each other in Rebecca's womb. The answer to the objection is that the supralapsarian interpretation holds, given the precise quality under which Jacob was elected and Esau was reprobated. And that is in verse 12. It was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. Well, before they had been born, neither one was elder or younger. And this is so for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil. And I'll point out here that verse 11, for the children is in italics. Now, usually I don't really have any use for the italics, but the italics mean that the translators understood that phrase, or that expression, to have been implied by the Greek text in this case, for the children being not yet born. And usually I would say, well, if that's your translation, that's your translation. But in some cases it does help to know that is not to be understood as in the original text. So we could read it, for being not yet born. For what? Who, in this case, not yet being born. And of course, the ones not yet born are the elder and the younger. So I'll just read it that way. For being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth, it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. Okay, back to verse 13, or now to verse 13. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. And even those names were given not only after the children were born, but on account of the birth. Esau came out all red, and so he was called Esau or Edom. And Jacob supplanted him, pulled him back into the womb, and came out instead. Esau is the firstborn, but Jacob supplanted him by being the first one to have fully come out of the womb, as that's what I recall from the passage in Genesis. We won't look at that, but what I want to point out, though, is that the names themselves, Jacob have I, even that verse 13, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated, has a special reference to the birth, and that is the precise quality under which they are understood to be elect. And so the supralapsarian interpretation of this verse would hold. And not only that, but you have a different, a perhaps more, I don't know how you describe it, but if you look at the case of Isaac, starting with, say, we'll start with verse 8. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise, at this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived. And the interesting thing about Isaac is that this promise was given a year before the birth of Isaac. So roughly 3 months before Isaac would have been conceived. So it was prior to his conception, and the name Isaac was given to Sarah's son before Isaac had been conceived. Okay, that's Romans 9. The last verse I want to look at today, we've talked about election. We touched on reprobation in terms of Esau. The last verse is Proverbs 16:4. The Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. So I've actually looked at some commentators on this verse, and what I find people saying often is the opposite of what it says. They interpret it as saying, the Lord hath made the day of evil for the wicked. In other words, that given that the Lord created all people and created man upright, and men have sought out many devices, they've fallen into sin. The idea is that God has appointed a day of evil, a day of justice for the wicked. But that's not what it says. It's true, but that is not what the verse says. Yea, the Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. Now, to make the day of evil for the wicked is to make something not for himself, but for the wicked. And that is an important point of God's justice. He does punish people for their sins for their sake, because of what they did and what they deserve. But he also made the wicked for the day of evil for himself, to show his own justice. And it's not a mere display of his justice, it's to show the riches of his grace towards his elect. The Lord takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that he should turn and live. And so the purpose for reprobation, for him appointing men to hell, and to do so even before he intends or decrees that they should fall into sin or be created, is given back in Romans 9:22. What if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had afore prepared unto glory. So those are my reasons why Supralapsarianism is biblical, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you disagree with me, you want to present your case, feel free to leave a comment, and thanks for watching.